Well, it was less than 2 weeks ago that the House of Commons voted against a Conservative motion to drop COVID-19 travel restrictions, specifically for airports. In fact, they extended them. Now, to discuss this in more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, joining us once again from Toronto. Brian, a former NHL star is even blasting Toronto's airport as the worst in the world over these massive delays.
Yeah, Ryan Whitney, he's a former defenseman in the NHL, part of a popular hockey podcast called Spit and Chicklets, bit of a media personality, and he was going through Pearson on his way to Boston. And he just got delay after delay. It is, he was talking about going through American customs because like at most Canadian airports, you can pre-clear U.S. customs. He gets through there, his bags are checked, he's through customs, flight gets canceled. Okay, well, I need to leave. Well, no, you need to go back through Canadian customs because you're now in the United States. Well, I haven't left the airport. Well, you got to go through Canadian customs. Due to the delays, he's there for hours, just needs to get his bags because he says he can get a flight out of Buffalo, get to Boston on time. No. Anyways, problem after problem, delay after delay. This is something that's been going on for more than 2 months now, Hal. And maybe it'll finally catch the government's attention. Will they act? I don't know. Last time this was in the headlines, Omar Al-Gabra, the transportation minister, a smart guy who, I've covered him a long time. He's a smart guy. He should know better. He blamed travelers being slow because they forget how to take out their laptop to put them in the bin. That's not the problem here. And there are major issues that the government needs to fix, and they're just not doing it.
And you even pointed to a series of posts on Twitter by a former airline executive who says, hey, you don't blame the airlines, but this is more on the government. Will we see some action soon? Will Omar Al-Gabra take some action here?
I mean, he's got to. This has got to be his number one issue. And instead, the other day, he's tweeting out, hey, it's donut season. It's him, at Ribfest was on in Ottawa. And I know you remember that fondly because everyone that worked near Parliament Hill did. But he was at the Tiny Tim's Donuts truck that was there and snapping a photo of himself. Look, he's not going to be on this 24/7. He does have to eat at some point, but that was tone deaf because this didn't just start on the weekend. It didn't start with Ryan Whitney. It's been going on for 65 days. A gentleman named Duncan D, who is the former chief operating officer for Air Canada, put out for the whole world to see why the airlines aren't to blame. He said, you can't blame an airline for not being able to operate properly when you've got 65 plus delays going on, when you can't get your plane unloaded so that it can turn around because the customs hall is full. And so people are waiting for 2 hours on the tarmac after their plane lands because the customs hall is full. You can't get more people in it. And this isn't with extra social distancing for COVID. People are cheek to jowl and it's still packed. And so planes wait 2 hours, then they finally get off. Well, at that point, the aircraft has missed its maintenance, scheduled maintenance. So it may not be able to take off again until it gets that scheduled maintenance, which is now backed up. The flight crew, which was supposed to land, do a quick turnaround, and take off again with a new batch of passengers, they're going to time out because by law, by regulation, there's only so many hours that they can work in a day. And look, I'm fine with that as a passenger. I don't want to be on the plane with the pilot on his 22nd hour. He went through in detail how this is every problem that you hear about with the airlines and the front desk and the planes being canceled and the flights being rescheduled is due to the government's inability to deal with CATSA, the security at check-in, the customs when you're coming back in. All of these are government problems that they have known about for more than 2 months, continue to refuse to fix. And by the way, travel season, it picks up in 3 weeks. Kids are out of school. People are going to be going on summer vacation. I'm telling you, Hal, that I'm reconsidering a couple of trips. I was thinking of, do I go this place? Do I go that place? I'm not sure that I want to fly through Pearson right now, the busiest airport in Canada, the closest one to me.
Maybe the safest thing to do right now, the best thing to do is be a tourist in your own town. Forget about flying and maybe just drive everywhere. But now here's the challenge there with fuel at an all-time high. That's pretty expensive too right now, Brian. Gas is over $2 a litre in many regions of the country. Has there been any talk by the Trudeau Liberals of cancelling the carbon tax to give Canadians a break, or maybe even the federal gas tax, similar to what Premier Jason Kenney did here in Alberta with the provincial gas tax?
No, none at all. And in fact, they're bringing in what amounts to a second carbon tax in July. It's called the Clean Fuel Standard. And we've talked a bit about that before. That'll take effect in July during the busy summer driving season. That will push up the price yet again. Jason Kenney has already reduced Alberta's gas tax. I know that Ontario Premier Doug Ford passed legislation to reduce it. That doesn't come into effect until July 1st. That'll drop the price by 5.7 cents a liter in terms of taxes. Hopefully, drivers get to see that difference. But people want to say this is all about the war in Ukraine. This is because of Russia invading Ukraine. This is the sanctions on the Russian oil and gas industry. Absolutely, that plays a part, and that's why gas is up everywhere around the world. But is that the only thing going on? No. A big chunk of this is our own doing, Hal. We have passed policies and elected leaders who fundamentally believe that the price of fuel should be higher. Why? To stop us from driving, to stop us from flying. Not them, just us. So I looked at the cost differential between different parts of Canada and its nearby American neighboring city. So to give you an example, after converting into liters and Canadian funds, in Buffalo yesterday, it was $1.51 a liter. On the Canadian side, $2.09 a liter. In Vancouver, it was $2.25 a liter. In Bellingham, Washington, it was about $1.68 a liter, I believe. Now, you guys in Alberta have the lowest prices in the country, $1.76, $1.77 area in Calgary and Edmonton. Well, drive down south of the border, go to Great Falls, Montana. It's about $1.55, so it's still cheaper. You guys are cheaper for several reasons, including normally lower taxes, but you've also recently cut. Ours are higher. The anger that I've received online, the emails that I've received, vile emails from Trudeau supporters who believe that don't you dare say that he has anything to do with this is unbelievable, Hal. People don't want to believe that our policies have anything to do with it, but we have. Yes, the war in Russia's having in the sanctions, that's driving up the price globally. We're pushing it up ourselves. And think about this. Remember, we used to complain about the tax on the tax because we'd have the gas tax, then we charge GST on top of it. Now we have the tax on the tax and the tax because we have the excise tax. Now we have the carbon tax, then we charge the GST on both of them. And it's almost what the government's taking in GST is almost double what it was just over a year ago.
Yeah, some people may say we may be a little overtaxed here in Canada. Brian, membership sales with the federal Conservatives were cut off with 3 of 6 campaigns claiming that they had the winning formula. Pierre Poilievre's camp said they sold more than 300,000 memberships. Now that seems like a lot here. While Jean Charest and Patrick Brown's camp say they have the road to victory. So let me ask you, who will end up receiving the most votes?
We don't know. And it's, the way the system works is it's not the most votes, it's the most points. The real winner in all of this, by the way, is the Conservative Party of Canada because they get that $15 from every member that signed up. And we're talking about 500,000 odd members. That's a lot of money in the bank for the Conservative Party. But when it comes time to voting, look, you may have signed up with one candidate and decide to switch your vote later on. We don't know. Obviously, Poilievre has the most membership sales. If we, and let's take all their numbers at face value. He says 311,000. Patrick Brown says 150,000. Jean Charest says, won't say how many, just tens of thousands, but that they have the path to victory. What does that mean? Well, they've all got to get, whoever wins has to get the most points. Each riding, each of the 338 ridings across the country is worth 100 points. So, the Brown and Charest camps were trying to say, most of Pierre's sales are in Western Canada. Yeah, he's a bit lopsided in Western Canada, but they still say, well, no, Pierre Poilievre sold 118,000 memberships in Ontario. Well, that's significant. So, we'll have to see how it plays out. Jenny Byrne, who is, essentially the person running Poilievre's campaign, she was asked straight up in an interview, do you have enough votes to win? Will you have the points to win? She didn't say yes. So she's confident, but she didn't say yes. She said, talked about their strategy and moving forward and going ahead. If they were confident they had it, she probably would have said yes. He is still the front runner, but none of us are going to know because none of us can verify any of these numbers. And between now and when people get the ballots, they might switch to Poilievre from Poilievre, to Charest from Charest, et cetera. lots of people will be moving around in that time.
You know what's interesting as well, Brian, on social media, I noticed a lot of Liberal supporters saying they specifically bought memberships not to support Poilievre, but to vote against him. So it'd be interesting to see of the
Yeah,
311,000, how many.
I'd be surprised if there's that many people that did that. That might be more of a social media thing than a reality thing. By the way, once the full list is released by the party to all the candidates, they all have 72 hours to challenge. And so if you see that, Justin Trudeau's chief of staff bought a membership, you can challenge and try and have them thrown out.
Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked by a student about bringing in electoral reform and proportional representation. Now, Trudeau said no, but you didn't really appreciate the way our Prime Minister responded. Can you explain?
Well, he's meeting with students, right? This is the Chilean president is in Ottawa, and this is the type of guy that Trudeau loves to meet with. He's very progressive. He leads a left-wing coalition in Chile that, by the way, includes the Communist Party. But he's young, he's progressive, he's handsome. So Trudeau has to meet with them, and they get their romance going, and they have a town hall with students. Well, it's high school students. They're asking questions. Just answer them nicely. The guy's asking about, will you bring in proportional representation like you promised in 2015? And Trudeau just, no, I don't believe in proportional representation. He's very dramatic in his answer. He's got lots of flair and showing off his Red Sox and all of this. But then he starts talking about how he likes ranked ballots. And he said that way you can vote for the red guy and then the orange girl and then the green guy. And then we never have the blue people running things. Why is he saying that to students? He is acting, it's not a Liberal Party rally. He is acting as the Prime Minister of Canada and being highly partisan with high school students. Dismissive of the kid's question, claims he never supported proportional representation when it was in his 2015 platform, and says he wants ranked ballots. He only wants ranked ballots because Liberals believe that they're everybody's second choice. The MPs on the committee voted to bring in a form of proportional representation. They were able to get together the NDP and the Bloc and the Conservatives to say, yeah, we'll accept this. May not be everything we want, but we'll accept this. And once the committee put forward the report, Trudeau said no. So he was dismissive, he was arrogant, and he showed that he only believes in electoral reform, which we do not need, but he only believes in it if he can rig it so that it helps Liberals win at the end of the day.
Interesting, you said orange girl. When you think orange, it's Jagmeet Singh, so kind of gives you a pause there. Hey, Brian, the Prime Minister is in the United States this week. He toured a NORAD facility in Colorado before heading to Los Angeles for the Summit of the Americas. What's on the agenda there?
If you were to sum it up, it would be a variation of Build Back Better and climate change. The Biden administration is the host, so June 6th to June 10th is the Summit of the Americas. There were some countries that weren't invited, like Venezuela and Cuba. The Mexican president, Almos, he's decided he's not coming, and the Biden administration is getting a lot of pushback saying, you don't really have an agenda going on here. It is kind of weak sauce. It does sound like they're just going to talk about issues like climate change and building back better after the pandemic, but at just a very high level. Normally these things, you've got months and months of officials holding meetings. What can we agree on? Where can we agree? Where are we going to disagree? What can we put in a statement? And this takes months. And so by the time the leaders show up, most things are hammered out already, especially the tricky stuff. So you've either agreed to disagree, or just decided you're not going to talk about certain things. That's what the officials do. The Americans didn't do that. They didn't get it set up. So there's going to be a lot of pomp and circumstance. We'll see how many celebrities Justin Trudeau is meeting with while he's down in LA, because that's what his government has been good about doing before when they've gone to LA, rather than focusing on selling Canada or Canadian business interests.
Canadian military officials, Brian, say that China had two of its jets buzz a Canadian plane over international waters. Now, this seems like a highly aggressive move for a country we're not at war with.
Yeah, it was flying Canadian military aircraft flying near North Korea, but definitely inside international airspace. So it was above waters, and they buzzed by it. The Canadian military said that they had to change course to avoid a collision. That is highly aggressive. It's not the first time that this has happened, though. China's been getting more aggressive, especially for any government, any military going into places that it believes is its sphere of influence. So North Korea, they would consider that their sphere of influence. The Straits of Taiwan, where we've sent naval ships in the past, they would consider that. In fact, they buzzed some of our naval ships in 2019 in similar moves. So yeah, it is aggressive from China. It is belligerent from China. Not unexpected, unfortunately, though.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.